When Robert Bosch was born, the car had not yet been invented. 20 years later, however, the world had changed, and a young man in Stuttgart was considering the course his life should take and what he should do for a living.
I think what he experienced during his apprenticeship had a huge impact on him. He said that his instructor never really showed up and that the tools were lousy. And as an apprentice, of course, he had no power to change anything. I think it was experiences like these, both during his apprenticeship and at the other companies he worked for during his years as a journeyman, that prompted his decision to be his own boss. In that way, he could decide how work would be done, what its quality would be, and how his people would be treated. So this is precisely what he did. In November 1886, he set up a small courtyard entrance workshop in Rotebühlstraße in Stuttgart's West End.
The young Robert Bosch placed great importance on punctuality, accuracy and discipline, both for himself and his associates. Dressed in a wool suit, he navigated the streets of Stuttgart on an English safety bike. For its time, a daringly modern mode of transport. Most considered a bicycle of this sort to be dangerous, and its rider reckless or foolhardy. The intrepid Robert Bosch, however, it was very much in keeping with the era, and, as he knew, a new era had just begun.
He was always fascinated by technology. He even subscribed to a journal for electrical engineering, which of course wasn't easy to afford for him at the time. He wanted to stay abreast of the latest industry developments.
Although he loved technology, he was not the kind of person to shut himself in his workshop and chip away at problems until they were solved.
There's a wonderful quote of his which goes like this: "Whenever you can't do something yourself, be it for lack of skill or lack of time, the main thing is to know who the right people are for the job." He was no inventor. He would have been the first to admit that. But he had a great talent for recognizing which ideas could and should be developed further and then, later, made ready for the market. And his other great gift was finding the right people for the job.
And good people should also be paid well. He put it best himself when he said, "I don't pay good wages because I have a lot of money. I have a lot of money because I pay good wages." Alongside decent salaries, his associates received benefits such as health insurance and paid vacation. Today, this may seem paternalistic, but this was the era of unbridled Manchester capitalism, and his peers took to calling him Bosch the Red. He was felt to be a socialist whose excessive humanism led him to identify too strongly with his workers. Yet he was successful. Right from the start, this success was based on three key principles. The company should sell a wide range of products, it should have a global presence, and it should remain innovative. The first few years in the tiny Bosch workshop were, as he said himself, a shambles. But one day a customer asked him to make an ignition device. He was asked to replicate a device built by another manufacturer, but he saw that it didn't work as it should, or as well as he would like it to, so he decided to modify it. He improved its quality and its reliability. His customer received a better ignition device than he was expecting and immediately ordered another. For the first time, the small company now had a proprietary product. In the early years, Robert Bosch also worked as a mechanic, developing new products. These included an electrical bell pull, lightning conductors, and doorbell systems. But when faced with the challenge of equipping a three-wheeler with a magneto-ignition device, he put his workshop foreman, Arnold Zeringer, in charge of the project. The result was so radically different from anything that had been made before that Bosch was able to patent it. The new ignition device propelled the small company to the forefront of engine technology. Getting gasoline engines to work at very high speeds hinged on having a device that could reliably generate ignition sparks in the engine's combustion chamber. Robert Bosch instilled a culture of innovation among his associates in the company. Take Gottlob Honold, for example. When Honold joined the company in 1901, he had a little den where he could develop his ideas. This included basic research as well as product development, turning ideas into things that could then be produced and sold. The company soon became an innovation leader, with a constant stream of new products, particularly for the automotive industry. What made Bosch special was that it started from its customers' needs: starter motors, generators, lighting systems. Innovation became a central factor of the company's success. Yet innovation can be expensive. The company currently spends around 10% of its annual sales revenue on research and development. And if developments make sense and are regarded as potentially groundbreaking, work is continued on them until they are ready for series production, even if they take longer than planned and cost more than budgeted for. To work in this way is a luxury. It would not be possible in a stock corporation. Yet Bosch is not a publicly listed company, and this has significant benefits for its innovativeness. If you look at the diesel injection pump, it took 15 years before we really got it to the stage we wanted. It was the same with the ABS anti-lock braking system. It was nearly a decade until everything worked and it was ready for series production. Innovation comes naturally to Bosch. Its associates are among the most prolific inventors of any company worldwide. Yet Bosch does not want to rely on its innovative strength alone. People also have to want to buy its innovations.
The major breakthrough came when a car fitted with Bosch ignition won a famous international race. Then everyone wanted this device.
Everyone, of course, meaning those people who actually owned a car, and there were not many of them.
The motorist community in Germany was very small at the time, compared to France and the United States, where it was much larger. Anyone who wanted to sell their automotive products had to market them there.
The company was still small. It had only 20 associates when it started to expand internationally.
The first step was basically to find an agent, ideally someone who was already established in the country. The next thing was to open up a local sales office, and then, ultimately, a manufacturing facility.
In the first decade of the 20th century, cars became increasingly common. They were no longer merely the playthings of a select group of wealthy motorists. Trucks were now transporting goods. Buses were taking passengers to their destinations. Fire engines were driving to fires. A large number of these vehicles were fitted with Bosch ignition systems worldwide.
Just before the First World War, Bosch was generating more than 80% of its sales in markets outside Germany.
Yet, in 1914, Germany went to war against these same countries, ultimately plunging the company's business into deep crisis.
After the First World War, and even during the war, the company's assets abroad were confiscated, and not only its assets, but also its license and trademark rights, which was almost worse.
Bosch found itself left with nothing. 20 years of successful international growth up in smoke, and on top of that, Germany had lost the war. Its products were shunned abroad. Yet one thing stuck in people's minds: the outstanding quality associated with the Bosch name.
History repeated itself during the Second World War. It was exactly the same. The sales offices and manufacturing facilities outside Germany were expropriated, and Bosch had to start again from scratch.
Robert Bosch died in 1942 at the age of 80. His successors managed to re-establish long-standing contacts with overseas partners and to rebuild the company for the third time. They created such secure foundations for the company's global presence that it has grown steadily to the present day, mastering the ever-tougher challenges of globalization while at the same time becoming established in local markets. Robert Bosch had his first major success with the magneto ignition device for cars, so it really was an important product. It removed many of the obstacles that were holding the car's development back. It turned out to be the car's success story. The thing is, it's very risky for a company to depend solely on one product. So that's why Bosch kept diversifying its product portfolio to include things like windshield wipers, turn signals, and thousands more. With these new product lines, Robert Bosch acted early to avoid being over-dependent on magneto ignition systems. Yet he also began to wonder whether it wasn't just as risky to focus on one single industry. As the company found out to its great cost in 1925, that risk was very real. In 1925, the European automotive industry collapsed. Vehicle sales plummeted by nearly 40%, which hit Bosch very hard. And Robert Bosch asked himself what other products his company could manufacture. He instructed his management colleagues to start looking for new ideas. Take the refrigerator, for example. Of course, electrical fridges already existed, but only for the catering industry. What Bosch had in mind was to create a refrigerator that the average household could afford. Another example is power tools. People wanted small, easy-to-use tools for manufacturing tasks, but there was nothing available in the market. Luckily, there was a small hair trimming device in development at that point, and it could be modified to create power tools like drills, screwdrivers or grinders. The key was putting the motor inside the handle. After household appliances and power tools, the company expanded into other industries. In 1929, televisions. In 1932, car radios and gas-fired boilers. In 1934, film projectors. Later, the company moved into packaging technology, industrial technology, telecommunications, and solar technology. In the 1970s, Bosch was even involved, temporarily, in making prefabricated houses. Some of these product lines were eventually abandoned. Others became a core part of the company's portfolio. It always depended on two questions. Was it a good match for Bosch, and would it be profitable in the long term? Diversification is of course an ongoing process. Bosch has been in the thick of this process for the best part of 80 years, but it has always pursued one goal: to put the company in the best possible position and secure employment for all its associates. And this remains the great challenge for the future. Whatever setbacks it has faced, it has always been the company's adaptability that has driven success.